everybody, to West Coast Women Rising. I'm JJ Flizanes, and we've got Tawney Noriega back with us. Welcome back, Tawney.
Hello. Yes, very much happy to be back, ready to get into the convo for today.
So I know you had told me, I think it was last year, end of last year, that's how much time has passed since we've had a conversation. You wanted to talk about collaboration versus competition. So let's start with why. What has come up that has wanted you to focus in this direction?
I love that. Well, it's interesting just, creating a community that's growing so large. We're about to hit like 7,000 people inside of the Facebook group. So you come across so many different people and you hear different stories and perspectives of what people deal with when they're navigating business. And there kind of has been a thread more so, I feel like we attract in our community very like emotionally intelligent women, right? And so I think that there's been a lot of conversations of women that have been self-aware where they're like, oh, I can feel a little tension. I can feel a little, they do the same thing. Am I allowed? So there's been these conversations that are I'm like, oh, let's talk about this because I think that is competition and collaboration happen inside of a community. So what a great topic to bring to the table.
So have you seen it are they just bringing it to you, or have you seen it like in between members that are having conversations or having issues? Like how are you noticing this in this community?
So, there has been, of course, and I'm talking to hundreds of people. So yes, it comes up. There, has been an instant, I think in Ojai, that was where I really saw it. Because, I kind of would explain it this way. When we had just coffee and connection, we had all of these people coming from all different areas, right? Some people are coming from Ojai, from Carpinteria, Fillmore, Simi Valley, Ventura. So there was kind of like everybody coming together, melting pot. Um, but then when you do an event like that in Ojai, which is so small, I attracted a lot of the locals. And so it was this like micro vision I got to see where, there was a couple of people that had either made comments, there was a situation that was like brought up where they're like, I can't go to an event because these other people do the same thing as me. Right. And you're like, whoa, which is kind of, I will say is kind of like not out of the ordinary, I think, around networking groups. I think in certain models for networking groups or communities or referral based um, uh, meetups, right? They do focus on maybe one type of business, right? So, I've been exposed to that in other communities. You can only have one marketer, right? So then there's no competing or with somebody else. And so totally understandable. So when people tend to come inside of Ventura County Business Women, they tend to bring their baggage of maybe past experiences that they've had inside of networking groups, right? So maybe only one certain industry per group, or there's a lot of people that offer similar services, but there's no real bridge of being able to talk about it, which then comes into collabs, right? So I think of me just seeing it, and then also like me and my being my own person and in business. I've had my own experiences where I've had to like almost clarify, like, no, I'm not here for competition. Like, I'm here to like build and collaborate. So I think it's also in my own experiences growing as, a community builder, me being my own business person. And also, I really pay attention. I think that's what, I'm really excited to talk to you about is just like the mindset and the energy behind competition versus collaboration. So just my interest in, how does the brain work? How do people operate based on their experiences? What has people choose collaboration versus choosing competition?
Great. Yeah, let's get into it. I actually kind of want to talk about a little bit to lead into this. So my birthday was a week ago ish, and actually a week ago, as the recording of this podcast, I took myself on what I'm now going to call my birthday journey, a medicine journey. I last year decided to travel. We travel to Italy usually once a year, and it's usually a birthday. And I didn't want to go again in the beginning of March. It's cold, and I've been there enough during March. So I said, let's wait and go in April. Maybe it'll be warmer. Of course, it wasn't drier, but it was warmer. Next time I said, let's go warmer and drier. So now we're going in June. Anyway, so I was here, and it was weird because I have this tradition that I'm always traveling on my birthday. Like that's what I do to honor myself. And here I am at home going, twiddling my thumbs, thinking, what do I do? I have no tradition. I have no way of honoring my birthday. And I want to do something. And it just sort of came up that, oh, and I had a lot of clients come and do medicine journeys. And I got real jealous, I won't lie, because I had done one in like a year and a half. And I was like, man, it's probably time. I probably need to like flush out the pipes and do a little reset. And so I said, I'm going to give myself the journey experience the day before my birthday. So last year I did it. It was fucking life changing. I was like, oh my God, okay, this is what I'm going to do every year that I'm home, because this is an awesome way to sort of come back to what is real. What is real? And let's talk about what's real, because when you talk about collaboration versus competition, to me, there's an illusion of separation is that we have with each other and with who we are that creates, it's basically like in law of attraction, it's alignment or out of alignment. When I'm out of alignment, I feel threatened and I'm in scarcity because I don't actually understand what is real in a broader sense, in a spiritual sense, in an energy sense. When I'm in a collab situation, I understand who I am, my role, my resonance, that I'm not for everybody. I know I said that at the beginning of this podcast because, I'm quite intense. But it's a deflection. It's a way to sort of like set it up and say, look, I'm not for everyone and I understand that. That gives people permission to say, okay, cool, I don't like you. Cool. And I'm okay with that. And I let you know that up front. But it's also settling in my own skin to be able to know who I am, know what I offer, know what I do, and know that the people that are attracted to me are ready for me and what I have to offer them. And not everybody is, but that is all of you. That is all of us. Every single one of us are not for everybody. So I did my journey a week ago today for this birthday. And it was really profound again. And you just never know what's going to come up. And I had had some really interesting experiences of like, and I haven't talked about it yet on my own show. So this is going to be the first time I've talked about it like publicly, minus my own groups who saw me go through it. And they're like, oh my God. Because they're all coming to do one. And they're like, if you had that many tissues, I'm like, everyone's journey is different. You don't know what you're going to have. But I was literally led to understand that I'm sitting on a, what I'm going to call, or what Gay Hendricks calls, an upper limit. It's like your next level. And I think we've talked about this before. In exercise, everyone understands it. If you want to get stronger, you lift weights. You do exercises that make your muscles fail. Let me say that again. Your muscles need to, as a personal trainer, your muscles need to go to failure to send the signal to the brain that says, I have to rebuild this muscle stronger than it was before. Without that input, without that contrast, without that stimulus, you don't get stronger. That's it. It's that simple. Well, okay. Well, in life, our contrast does the same thing for us in business. If we don't have contrast, we don't get stronger because we don't know how to hold a bigger container. And the couple of the messages that came through for me, and I'm saying this and sharing this with you because it might be relevant to other people in the community. So I've been asked, I'm very confident about my mission on this planet. I know why I'm here. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to be doing it, delivering it. I mean, maybe sometimes the details will change and shift, but I get it. I'm very clear now, but not everybody wants what I have. And as a business owner, that makes making money from it sometimes challenging when you don't have the right audience or you don't have people that are ready for you. So Source came in the beginning of this to tell me, to show me that I have to spread my wings. In fact, I chose a card. I do a card deck with these journeys, no matter who you are. And I pulled the same fucking card that I pulled when I was in Sedona. I've only used this deck twice and I pulled the same card. I'm like, if that isn't clarity, it's like Aurora of Gamma. And I'm like, it was all about resonance and 40 hertz. Anyway, I had to laugh. I'm like, oh my God. And I shuffled the deck. My intuition said, shuffle it again. Like I shuffled it. I did my clearing. And then it said, shuffle it again. I'm like, okay, I'm shuffling it again. I pulled this card. I'm like, you fucking kidding me. Here's the same card from August when I was in Sedona and the card deck was screaming at me because I've been looking at it for years. It's like, finally buy me, buy me, buy me, buy me. Like, okay. And the message was clear about the transformation that I'm currently in this red hot minute in. And it's uncomfortable as fuck. And it's yeah, and because we don't know where we're going. we all love this idea of control, of knowing everything. We get all like, oh, I know where I'm going. No, you don't. You have an idea of who you are, but life is going to present itself and you're going to have to navigate that. So on this journey in the beginning, I got the whole like, allow more light in. And that it's hard. And I got to keep this body clean and I got to keep this body growing because it's a lot of light to hold at every new level that you grow to. And it said, look, they're all not going to want this. They all don't want what you're doing. But there are people that are waiting for it, and it's your job to do it. So that was it. I kind of know that, but so I went through that part. And then later in the journey, I got this really strong clarity of, oh, yeah, I was kicked out of my family for being me. It's not safe to be me. My aunt had texted me who she was part of the family that kicked me out, who said, yeah, you're too much. If you don't agree with us, we don't want anything to do with you. And that was 17, 18 years ago. So when I like got the clarity and the divine timing of her message to me as I went into the journey and realizing what she represented, I'm like, oh, duh. Yeah, of course it's not safe to be me. I got kicked out for being me. But the whole time I didn't shrink because of it. I just moved on. But here's another instance. So to bring this home in terms of messages. As a business owner, you have two, in my opinion, you have two ways of showing up in the world. There's one that you need to make money to pay your bills. And when you're only looking at the money aspect of it, it kicks you out of alignment because you forget why you're doing what you're doing. Doesn't mean it's not hard. It's hard, right? But if I chase money, I forget my impact. I forget who I am. So when I'm out of alignment, when I'm thinking of being in scarcity, and trust me, I've been there, and there are times I'm still there. It's a part of our reality. It's learning how to adapt. It's adaptation and growth and evolution. It's not just change. I've been getting messages like stay put, stay put, stay put, stay put, don't do anything. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I'm like, okay, fucking when is it going to be here? It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, right? And so I think when you're in that stage, you're going to have the point of view of everything is competition because it looks like it's taking it away from you because you forget who you are and you forget that you are not always the deliverer of the right and perfect information. Yeah, I've been at the Ojai meeting many times and I do a lot of the same things that some of those women do there, but I also know that where people are on their stage in evolution, they need to hear different things. They need someone who's depressed is not going to resonate with someone who's happy. It's just not going to happen. They're going to look at someone happy and be, you're annoying. You're too positive. You're annoying. You have no idea what I'm going through. Right. So someone who's depressed is not going to coach with someone who's really, truly resonating at a very high vibration. They're going to look for someone who has maybe come out of that and they're still like working their way through to the next level. And so for me, when you say competition versus collaboration, I think it's important as business owners to always remember that you're always in a growth mode. And even when you're flying high and you think you've got it all down and it's all great, it doesn't mean your message is for everybody. And not everybody wants what you have. And even if you may think that they do, it's not your job to sell it to someone who isn't at the same resonance. So teaching law of attraction, I share a lot of Abraham with people in all my groups. And it's amazing. And I get reminded basic, like on how people are coming in, what they can hear and what they can't hear. And for me, as I listened to the same Abraham over and over again, like years ago, like I think I listened 100 times this one that I just did not get. And I knew it was because it wasn't the frequency to get it until the day that I heard it the way, like I was like, oh my God, I get it. Because I had to like come up a couple frequencies to hear what I couldn't hear. So my message to people about collaboration versus competition is that there's more power like in finding and making peace with and honoring your part in the puzzle, your part on someone's growth journey, and knowing from a business standpoint, possibly where that is. And maybe people don't know that. Maybe they don't know where I'm clear that people that have gone through therapy who have not had a good experience are ready for me. People that have never committed to doing any personal work, probably not for me. Right? Because they haven't even gotten there yet. So if you understand, like on a good sales, funnel, on a good sales process, you understand the strategy of what it takes to get somebody from one point to being a buyer. There are signals, there are readiness, there are things that you have to see in someone to know they're really ready for you. Not everybody knows that. And I think if to finish off this thought, I would say this is an important piece to understand about who you are. not just who you are in this world and the truth of your existence and your divine timing of all these things, but to know who you are in someone's growth process and when, like, when's that patch that you are needed and what has to happen before they get to you, and then where do they go when they're done with you? Because we're all a part of this matrix of people coming in and then growing and moving on to the next person or the next thing or the next lesson. And maybe just like with life, I think that my ex-husband got me ready for this relationship. My ex-husband got me ready for all kinds of things. It had to be there in order for me to get where I am now. But we forget that because we are often, especially with the world, I mean, for crying out loud, between war and blah, 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 like everyone's in freak out mode. And then it becomes like I got to hold on as tight as I can possibly hold to what I got. And I can't see or understand that there are angels and energies and things are just working out on a level you can't even see. And you can't even allow it in because we're just focused on the insecurity, the feeling like I mean I'm in the so you know about the book, like we'll talk about that. Like I'm right now like still figuring out. I don't have a title for the book, and I have two offers right now, and I don't know where to go, and I don't even know if I should go with either one of them right now because I don't know if it's the right time. So I'm in super unfucking clarity, but in that time, that doesn't you don't make a decision. When you are out of alignment, you do not make a decision. You do not, you wait or you get into alignment until you're feeling more clarity and then you make a decision. But so many of us, because again, you got to pay the bills. I get that. But so what if you don't? So what if you don't? That doesn't feel good to be in competition. It doesn't feel good for your soul to compare yourself to other people. Just know that you're for the beginner, or you're for the intermediate, or you're for the advanced, or you're for the spiritual people, or you're for the, the people who think like engineers, or you're for the Christians, or you're for the pagans, or whatever. Like, like getting more clear about who you are, who you serve, and what part of the growth process for an individual or a company or a business are you best for? And that speaks to zone of genius.
Whew. I love that. Okay, so this is so cool. I came in, I had like a bunch of notes that I wanted to take, and one of them that I wanted to share, which is so perfect after what you just said, you know, collaboration requires self-trust, right? There's a you you need to know a pretty good idea of who you are, what you like, what you don't like, how you operate with others, how you communicate, maybe what your, shadows, weaknesses, flaws are, however you want to name those. Um, what's the bigger vision, the purpose, the passion, right? There's a level of you needing to know yourself. Now, inside of like the VCBW community, we talk about this a lot because we're in a business community, so I really look at business as just the focal point. What I truly care about is individuals being well. They know themselves, they understand themselves, because then I believe then you know how to operate with other human beings, right? And so when we're in this conversation about collaboration versus competition, it's interesting because even how you just so vulnerably shared, right? Like you had something happen in the past, and I very much have had that. I think everybody listening has had a moment where it was not safe to be you, right? And like, especially women that are in, I think, those conversations of personal development and inner work, whatever your flavor is, you want to call that. There's tends to be this like overly self-awareness about if you do belong. Are you safe? Are you okay? Right. And so then like that's what most people I see bring into community because there isn't a super solid relationship within. There's probably not a lot of environments that are helping that person understand themselves, connect to themselves, giving them affirmation, validation. So like, dude, it's weird when people come into community most of the time, especially given our community, because what we're standing for, right? People come in, they have had so many different experiences in their personal and professional life of not belonging. It's not safe to really be authentic and expressive. People will reject you. People will talk shit. People will criticize you. Like that literally is kind of like the common, right? So then you come into a community that's saying, hey, you can be an expert. We're talking about business, but you're also a human. We get to be humans together without trying to fix and change each other. That's fucking weird for people, right? Like, they go, what do you mean? Like, oh, like you're not gonna be mean to me because I'm different. So it's also like holding space for people transitioning, coming from like guarded, protected, put the masks on, I'm good, to then being like, hey, do you want to tell me like who you really are? And like, let's make sure we're like a good fit. Do we actually align together? And if we don't, no problem. You move on to the next. And so I think that collaboration does require that self trust, that identity. You know who you are, because then inside of competition, um, it's like you know yourself. And there's something I wrote down that I loved, and I think you kind of were hitting into that too, is two people can sell the same thing, but you cannot sell another person's perspective. So it's also in like inside of the conversation of collaboration versus competition, if collaboration requires self-trust, if it requires you understanding yourself, um, then it's almost like when something similar comes up, you kind of are like, oh, dope, that's awesome, because you've already kind of done that internal work to even know that, like, awesome, this is why it's showing up. But then it's also honoring. And I think that, again, that inner relationship, that self trust is like, you got to know that you are the magic. Like, that's what actually sets you aside from anybody else. So, literally, no one could compete with you, anyways. And I like making that the standard. And I do think as a collective, we're kind of moving in that direction where people are starting to honor each other's individuality, and maybe we're starting to get to somewhere where we can show up in community and it's actually safe. We always need some growth in that area, but there's enough women and humans fighting for that, to know themselves and then to do well when you're with another. I want to take a breath there. What do you think, girl? I got more points. I got points. Let me take a breath.
Okay, take a breath. Can I add something about what you just said
Yes.
about safety? So while I acknowledged in the journey that it wasn't safe for me to be me in the past and I got kicked out for being me, I didn't shrink. Like when I was told by my family, and literally it was two aunts and uncle, their spouses, their kids. Okay. So a whole group of people basically said, look, you admit what you did was morally wrong, or we want nothing to do with you. I said, see ya. Like there was no negotiation. There was no, oh please don't kick me. Nope. There was bye. And I've never stopped, even in the face of my marriage, when I knew my ex-husband was threatened and like didn't like what I was doing and would question my authority and like, what do I know? You're not qualified to do that. Like I was told that you're not qualified to do that. And right. But I kept going anyway. I kept doing it anyway. Why? Because I believe and know what I know. And I also could see the pattern of him wanting to put me down to stop me, because he knew that like that if he actually agreed with me, he'd have to face some shit he didn't want to face. Right. So I could have compassion for that. But when it comes to responsibility or feeling safe, there is a deeper, wider, broader, more important safety connection that, whether you believe in God or source or creator, whatever your higher power is, that you have to have, because safety cannot come from outside of you. Safety cannot be, can you make things safer? Of course. Like I've created a community, you've created a community. In my community, we have circles. We do deep shit. People trust each other. They're friends for life. Because they feel so connected, because they're having these real conversations and they're really being vulnerable about every little thing that has ever happened to them. But inside a business setting or in the world, there's a certain amount of responsibility one has to come to create their own safety, to know and trust, because otherwise we're victims. Otherwise, we are never allowed, or we're never telling ourselves it's okay to be who we are or share what we know, because we're waiting for other people around us and the environment to change to give us something that we need to provide for ourselves. And that was my whole journey of this time of really understanding the mechanics of where I am and where I'm going, and knowing that even though I'm in ways that I don't even know, I'm afraid, and to do what's next, I have to keep reminding myself and getting in touch with my higher self, with my source, with my creator, with my God, whatever, my goddess, to say, look, I know I'm safe. I'm getting the message. I'm getting the message. I'm just being channeled right now. Do it anyway. Keep going. They need you. Um, and it's time, and don't, yeah. So I just want to mention that on the safety piece, because too often, especially anybody who's had trauma and abuse, safety is a huge, and it is for all of us, right? Safety is a real factor, but most people aren't taught how to create their own safety, and they are taught to look outside of themselves and demand other people change or be different before they can feel safe. You have to create that internal safety, and you have to create the resonance of. Now, that doesn't mean at all times, like you were mentioning, um and I'll have thoughts at the end about, like, okay, how do you determine who's a good collaboration? How there are ways for you don't need to collaborate with everybody, because not everyone's going to be the right person to collaborate with, and that's okay. What are the boundaries? What are the criteria? How are you being discerning? We still need to be discerning. It's not saying feel safe throwing yourself in the middle of a war, like you're walking down, like Wonder Woman did. You're not walking down the path, right, of people firing guns. That's ridiculous, right? There's still some discernment that you have to make in order to know what's safe for you, but it cannot be 100% about external people or environments. You have to find your way to be safe in many different ways that comes from within, and not be a victim to circumstance.
Absolutely, and I love that you we're saying that because it kind of goes into, okay, like if you're somebody that's kind of, we're talking again collabs versus competition. Being collaborative state is kind of way just a different experience and energy versus competition. One of the points that I wrote down that I feel like I'm going to kind of piggyback on what you said was, collaboration requires courage, right? Because if we're taking the consideration, collaboration requires self-trust, you knowing yourself, understanding how you operate, the whole nine yards. There is also then a self-awareness that you would kind of have of who works for you, like best for you, what kind of opportunities, what kind of collabs, because you would have kind of done that foundational work to be like, where am I at? What am I looking for? What am I creating? And then you have these opportunities that might show up, right? And so when we know ourselves, attracting opportunities, collaborations require courage, because I do think that there is that, again, that level of self-awareness, right? When we're in competition mode, competitive mode, there's almost like this flavor of there's not enough to go around. Someone might do better than me. It almost feels like tight and like, like kind of like, fuck, I'm scared. That's like what I feel like in competition energy, right? And so I think that competition is almost safer for somebody that doesn't have the capacity to really look at themselves, full spectrum, good and bad, right and wrong, whatever fuck. Competition is easier because then you don't have to go then within and look at your stuff. You make it about them. It's like an external problem instead of, when you look at collaborations, again, talking about that self-trust, like, dude, that takes courage to be able to go look in and actually be like, say an opportunity presents itself, to be like, no, that actually is not a good fit. Like, that takes such courage to be like, I actually know myself well enough that, I love what you're doing. You're awesome as a person, and it's just not for me. Where, even sometimes if we're not in that kind of situation, if we're not so deeply connected to ourselves, sometimes I think business women in this context, they just kind of say yes to things, and then collabs turn weird, and then they make it mean stuff about why you shouldn't collaborate, right? Instead of like that radical self responsibility, right? And that kind of flows into another thing here where I think like competition creates isolation a little bit, because in that standard, you be number one, you be the best, which, I think everyone should have that flavor. If you're really tapped in, tuned in, who you are, what your passion is, what your purpose is, of course, you're going to have that magnetic energy of like, let's fucking go. Like, I want to show up. I want to be visible. I want to make an impact. I want people to hear me and see me. Like, yes, that competitive energy, we're still utilizing that. But when it starts to become like a disconnect, I have to be better than, I have to make myself known at the cost or expense of others, right? It becomes this like isolation, and business owners already deal with isolation enough. Like, typically, like how much we deal with that nobody ever knows about. Like, shit's lonely being a business owner in most cases. So then you add that kind of dynamic, that perspective of Um, Competition, I feel like it drops you deeper into that isolation, right? Because you're kind of on guard. You're kind of like, when is the shoe going to drop? When is someone going to take something from me? Can I really trust people? I just think that is such a different energy than when you're in a collaboration. I'm good. I'm fucking amazing. This other person is good. They're fucking amazing. And we get to like co create. It's just such a different energy experience. Anything you want to flow in on that?
Yeah, when you were talking about sort of the isolation that happens in competition, and I had some rememberings of like why in my current rewire program, one of my clients, I just did her map yesterday with her, and I believe there are some truths that we as women experience potentially more. I don't know, maybe more than men. I really can't say that I'm not a man, but I mean, I know there are different things that men deal with than we do. But one of the things was this idea for women is that we have to be like perfectionists. We have to do things perfectly and we have to be nice. So I'm just going to give you a little breakdown of my client who I worked with yesterday in the Rewire, and she is a social worker. Her top three core wounds are abandonment, disapproval, and neglected. And one of the things that she has these, and she's not the only one. We collectively have these messages as women that we're supposed to be nice, that we have to be nice to everybody. We have to be liked. We have to be liked and be likable, and we have to be happy, and we have to do it right. We have to be perfect, and it's not okay to rock the boat, and it's not okay to be angry. In fact, it's put on a happy face. So some of the things that I had her do for her stretching, for the rewire, I told her to, oh, stop saying I'm sorry and apologizing, because literally, if she counts how many times in a day she apologizes for her fucking existence. I was like, no more I'm sorry and no more apologizing. In fact, I want you to get on Marco Polo and tell us every time you think someone's mad at you. And I want you to revel in someone potentially being upset with you, because we're so trained to be pleasing, which is why when you mentioned, like, it's not about, if someone was to approach me and say, "Hey, can we do a collaboration?" Right? There's a pressure that if I say no, it's gonna wound them, because maybe they have an abandonment wound or a rejection wound, and so I'm gonna feed into that, and they're gonna respond to that. So it's not safe again for me to necessarily be honest, because I then may cause a bigger ripple of drama by saying no. Um, so stop saying I'm sorry. Stop prostituting herself was another one, and over giving to other people around her. But I wanted people to just know that if that's you, if you're somebody who always feels like you have to be on, you have to be smiling all the time at people, that like, just be real. What came out of the new moon in this fire horse year for me was a term that most people in my community have been resonating with, which is radical authenticity. And I was going to do a podcast on it next week, but it's going to have to wait a couple weeks because I have a better thing I need to talk about that's more timely. But how many of us can actually be radically authentic and be okay with that? How many of us can be okay with being honest? You can still be kind. You can be kind and say, I'm not interested, or it's not a good partnership. It's not have to be mean, right? But it's being able to deliver clear conversation and communication about goals or about resonance or about whatever is ready for you. So I think women in general feel more vulnerable in collaboration, or and stay in competition, because they don't have to worry about hurting somebody else's feelings or saying no, or even approaching that next section of the conversation that you would have with somebody that you're potentially collaborating with. So if I had some recommendations for people out there to think about, what does it look like? There is a book that I've been recommending now more than ever, and it's to use it in a different way. It's called If Love is a Game, These Are the Rules. And it's written by Dr. Sheree Carter Scott. She's one of my favorites. She's been on my show several times. She's written a bunch of books. If Life is a Game, These Are the Rules. If Success is a Game, Negaholics. But If Love is a Game, specifically in the first chapter, that's a little bit about your relationship with yourself. And that's really healthy. And I think everyone would benefit from reading the first chapter and doing everything it says. In the second chapter, it's really about getting clear about what kind of partner you want to manifest. And sort of there's a three tier part to the list. There's a must have, what does she call it? It's basically like a deal breaker, and then in the middle is like a wish list. And I've been giving this homework to people to do for business relationships as well as for intimate relationships. And I think if everyone here could do this also for, let's say, collaborations. So, who would be a perfect collaboration partner? What are the things that they must have? And that's like a 3 to 5 bullet point list. What are some deal breakers? Things that, for me in podcasting, I've been given the opportunity to do ads on my show and share into a broader ad network. But the ads come from like Taco Bell, and I can't do that. I would lose credibility in half a second if I had Taco Bell as a sponsor, right? So that's like a deal breaker. Like, no, 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 I'm not doing fast food. I talk about health, for crying out loud, right? And then the middle of the list is going to be your wish list of things that you really want, like the things you really value about somebody and what would be in alignment with you. And I think when we're clear about who would we work with well, when we give some thought to what that person looks like, just like when we're dating. When you're dating somebody or looking for a relationship, you have criteria. So it would be really proactive to be able to have criteria about what you're working on, what you want to collaborate around, and who your collaborators are and what their values are. What, again, the must-have list, like they need to be flexible and humorous and easy to work with, and maybe their knockout punch is what it was called. But the deal breakers are, I don't know, a deal breaker could be something like, for me in business, it could be always using, let's say, oh, politics. Okay, so for me it'd be like not getting in the weeds with politics, or not getting in the weeds with, I don't know, maybe some religions, or very specific extreme ways of being. That might be a deal breaker for me. But a wish list could be all kinds of things. Like I'm going to partner with somebody next week on, health stuff, and I do Date Your Body, and she does similar things, but she and I have the same energy. And so I think that's just another thing to remember, and to help everybody in this collaboration conversation, is that if you can come in being proactive versus reactive, if you can make the list and know who would be good for you to work with and what they look like and what they sound like and what they feel like, then you're most likely going to be able to identify ahead of time who the right person is for you, which is going to be a lot better than being reactive, and someone approaches you and then you don't know and you haven't done the list and you're not clear. I don't know what I'm looking for. It's like shopping. If you go into a store and you have no idea what you're looking for, you're gonna spend a lot of time looking at things, and not as clear if you're going in knowing exactly, oh, I need a pink dress, it needs to be mid-length, it's for this event, it has to have long sleeves, blah blah blah, and now I know. So doing the list would be very helpful, in my opinion, for you to uncover who some when you meet them. Maybe you don't know them yet, and that's the point. Maybe you are hoping to find some collaborations, but you couldn't identify them if someone asked you to right now. So do the work to figure it out. Who are they? What kind of energy? There's a lot of people in my space that I don't trust. I don't think they've done the work. I think they're real good at saying the things, but I haven't seen the work. And so for me, my intuition has to be in alignment. I have to feel an ease. I have to feel a depth. I have to feel a trust in order for me to know that they've done the work, and that we've not the same work, but something complementary, in order for me to trust that this would be a good collab. So I don't know. That's just some thoughts I have.
One of the I'm gonna look at my notes here. There's some cool pointers. There's one I want to hit on is like community as an economic advantage, which was kind of interesting, which kind of follows on like the isolation, right? It's harder to just like be alone. You don't have that supportive network or environment really pulling for your greatness, helping you through hardships, reconnecting you to strategy and being intentional. Um, and I do think that networks outperform trying to do it by yourself. So, like, I think that, especially I can see for VCVW, there's a pretty good chunk of change that I was just, in my little back office trying to do everything by myself. And I had a lot of just those belief systems. I don't have money. I can't pay people full price, so I shouldn't ask. That will be disrespectful. I have to know how to do everything, or I should build everything to know how to do everything. Just those flavors. where it kind of kept me small. It kept me stuck for a while. And then me having to constantly, just doing my inner work, pushing my, how you call your upper limits, the boundaries of what I think I'm even capable of. And there was such a huge transition of like me telling the truth about what I need, and here's what I have, and here's other ways I could support because I might not have finances. Um, which I do think is a huge thing for business women, right? They won't make the moves because of their money stuff. And so, like, I had to hit a lot of those upper limits, right? Of how do I ask for help and it be the right person? I'm communicating legit what I actually need because I've taken the time to actually know what I need. So I'm not all crazy and fucking nuts communicating that. I find the right people that can actually help me because I am communicating it. Um, I just feel like you can grow faster. So then I start attracting all these women with like same vision, again, different levels of self-awareness or ways we do our self-work, right? But at the same time, there's still that parallel, even on like team dynamics, there's still hardships that come up, right? People, again, bring their baggage, but because there's a self-awareness, then the way those issues and hardships or uncomfortable situations come up and how those are dealt with is completely different, right? And so I think that's like also normalizing whether your personal relationships or your professional relationships, they really do operate the same. Like there's still a level of like communication, respect. People get upset. It's very normal, but how do we handle those in a healthy, conscious way, right? So I think that using community um, to grow faster, whether that's in business, but also in your personal life, if that makes sense. Anything you want to share there?
Yeah, we did our first Women Behind the Business last month. That was February, and there were only four of us. But everybody was like, "Great!" Like and I scheduled the next one around them, right? And then I invited Sheila to do a wine tasting, and now that we have like 11 people confirmed and three people that might be able to come. So if they come, it'd be 14. I probably could handle about 20 to 30 people. It would be tight at 30, but let's say 20, 25 people would probably be like a good number. Well, that's non-facilitated in a circle. Like it took us the whole time just to get a circle for four people, and and we were all coaches. And so it's interesting to sort of see and being at peace with and making peace with and being okay with that we can have 10 coaches who do the same thing in the room, and and it's okay if you don't feel called to work with any of them. And it's okay. There is enough business to go around. And again, because you have 10 people standing in front of you, they can't hear you. Some people are going to only hear you because you're saying the right thing. I have a friend of mine who she's a podcaster as well, and she's a therapist, and she does like makeovers. And I remember getting one of her clients who heard me on her podcast. She had signed up with her and then went, "Oh, no, no, this isn't, I don't think this is the right thing for me." So she got out of that deal. Then she said, "You said something that I needed. You said something that," and I was like, "Okay, cool." Right. Although I only took her so far because she still wasn't ready to hear the rest of it. So she was a bit of a pain in the ass to work with, but she came over because of one thing I said, but she couldn't receive it yet. And that's important to know. You may have the right tools for somebody, but they may not be able to receive it yet, both in the clients as well as the collaborative partners. So, yeah, I agree that we're at a time right now where it is so noisy. It is so overloaded with information and this person and that person. And I'm getting ready to launch my network. I mean, launch it meaning like invite other people to participate in it. And for the very reason that it's going to be a lot easier to grow together than it is to grow separately, and to help each other by sharing downloads, sharing listeners, sharing space, and identifying people together. I think that that is the way in which we are a community. We are a community whether we like it or not. Maybe you weren't raised in a community that was healthy, but whether it be your church or your PTA or your kids' school or your family, we are meant to be in community. So figure out, and the great thing about where we are in business is you get to choose who you play with.
I love that. Um, oh, so kind of off of that, I'm looking at my last three notes here. I'm like, okay. Um, So these all kind of go in alignment. So one point here is I think competition is a very small game strategy. We've talked about the energy, the mindset, how that kind of typically flows with competition. I feel like competition has that flavor of focusing on transactions. You buy, you sell, you hit your quota, you make your money, right? I feel like that vibe of competition kind of focuses on transactions. Collaborations, I think, are more long-term game because you are dealing with so many other humans, right? Competition is kind of the self by, you do your own thing. Collabs requires you interacting and doing work with other people, right? So I do look at collaboration. Competition would be transaction focused. Collaboration is more ecosystem focused, right? And so, what do I mean by that? Um, Coming into the second note was I think there's something happening. I kind of always said this in a different way, this kind of a newer thought because of collaboration competition combo. But I think the old model of how business has operated is that you really had to fight for the light. Like you really had to set yourself you had to compete like to be inside of the market. I think that is the old business paradigm. You better be the best, deliver the best customer service, best product, best marketing. Like it was pulling for a competing type of energy and market, right? But I do think that there is a shift happening where people in business are looking at, I don't want to fight like that. I don't like it's fucking hard, dude. So then what do you do instead? You start creating ecosystems, right? Ecosystems is where I think you create shared opportunity. So before it's almost like the old model, you have to do it yourself. There's a whole lot of things you got to do to be the best. It's exhausting. You're burnt out. You really isn't like a let's go slow and know ourselves for alignment, right? And then when you're looking at collaboration, this new model of ecosystems, people coming together to create shared opportunity, then I also think that flows into my last point here is collaboration really is an intelligent strategy. What you can get done with, again, knowing yourself so you're attracting the right people, right? When you have the right people in your corner and we're all consciously working on something, creating something, like again, what those results produce. And so it becomes collabs almost increase like the results, but I think there's a flavor that I want to talk about. That's why my brain's processing real quick. When you're around that many people, right? So you're taking the time to be self aware, how you operate, whether you're in your survival, if you're in possibility, you also then start getting a kind of an understanding of like how do other humans operate. And then I look at it like last year it was a huge goal, milestone for us. We did over 100 collabs last year. That's 100 people on top of business networking, servicing clients, um, of like learning how to be with a lot of different people in a lot of different stages of their life, in a lot of different mindsets and energy and how people do things. So I also think on one hand, sometimes being in community in collaboration is hard because it is kind of triggering because so many people are different, they do weird shit and you're like, yeah, right? And you're your own person. But then I also think if you're tending to yourself, you're knowing yourself, you're still putting yourself to go be in collaboration and community, you're exposing yourself to so many different dynamics of how people operate. I also feel like that just as a person, your emotional intelligence grows. Your ability to navigate different situations because you've worked or talked or you're around so many different kinds of people. I just think overall, again, it just you end up growing so fast, personally and professionally.
Well, I think it could definitely be an incubator for that. One of the things that you were talking about, the competition model is actually very masculine. It's very patriarchy. It's very fight. It's very testosterone driven. It's very, it's that survival mode of what would be considered our non-conscious brain, right? So that competition is an old. It means I'm not being conscious. It's not. I'm not in my conscious brain. I'm not accessing the creative power and the knowing that I have in the physical form that I have, because not every animal or mammal has a consciousness, right? We as humans have an ability to think about thinking. So we have this ability to do this, but we aren't using it when we're defaulting to our factory settings of being human, which is the competition, which is masculine. But in the feminine model, feminine is about allowing. Feminine is about flourishing. Feminine is about light and calling in through light. And when we're in a masculine way of competition, we are blocking the light, and we are blocking the ability to allow things in. In the masterminds that I've done in the past, whether I was running them or a part of them, part of the beauty of collaboration in, let's say, a mastermind situation where people aren't necessarily collaborating about how to do business together, they're just collaborating on how to help each other grow. You know, it was written about, Napoleon Hill writes about it in Think and Grow Rich, but there is literally another, like, you put four or more people in a group, and there's an elevated, expanded, energetic field that gets created that none of us have by ourselves. We open up a vortex, if you will, of creative energy just by collaborating. And again, it doesn't have to be that we're doing business together. It's just we're helping each other. And that's the possibility of coming together that doesn't happen when you're, individual and when you're by yourself. So those would be some of the thoughts that I have about what you just said. And when we're in competition, and there are times that I think there is healthy competition. Healthy competition helps to focus. When someone is too, right, we need both the masculine and feminine. When we're too all like loosey goosey all over the place, like we're not focused, and so then we wonder. So we're not results driven, and again, results can mean different things to different people, and results aren't always important. They are important for some things, right? But if you're just money focused, then you're going to miss the opportunity of growth and development and adaptation and creativity that come along with the feminine flow. So I think that you have to be real mindful and conscious about when you're putting in a competition that will motivate you to focus, because there are a lot of women that don't focus very well, right? So it doesn't really help. And just like there are a lot of men that don't focus really well, but they're built to focus more than we are, biologically and biochemically. So it does help us sometimes. But I think, again, I'm looking at like 20-80, like 20% of the time that competition might be healthy and help you focus in a way to strive to get to the next level. And sometimes it's internal. Like for me, it's well, if you can do it, I can do it. Like I look at other people and go, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Now that is an internal competition, not an external competition. No one needs to know that, but it motivates me to go, well, shit, what am I doing sitting here? Look at you doing all that, and I could do that. I have as much knowledge as you do. I blah, 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 whatever. So that little bit of competition's in my brain. It helps me to focus. And also it puts the next level in sight for me, versus I will second guess potentially if I don't see anyone else doing what I want to be doing. But if I can have a goal of saying, well, she did it or he did it, why can't I do it? And then now I have this sort of internal competition. But when we're together, it does feel nicer to be around people who are there to be supportive and to celebrate your success. In terms of law of attraction, if you can't celebrate someone else's success, you block your own.
And I am glad you brought up that point about, yes, like we're not saying competition is bad, right? It's like having the healthy form of it. It's also making me think of like if my husband listened to this, like he is so competitive, right? And he's a man, so we'll say that. So actually, let me bring it back. My daughter, she's very competitive, right? Like very competitive, but she's 8, so she always tries to break the rules, and it just sets him off because he's also so competitive. And then, me over here, I'm like, I could give two shits. I'm just here for a good time. No problemo. And on one hand, I very much enjoy seeing them competing with each other, right? It's healthy. They're being kind to each other, right? Um, but there is a level of competition, healthy competition, that it brings a flavor. There's kind of like, I'm thinking about, just the hype, right? Like when there's something on the line, the people, I'm trying to think of some people that tend to be a little bit more competitive around me. there is like a let's go, we're gonna get it. Like there is such a strong fiery flavor inside a competition. So again, like for anyone that's listening, if you're somebody that you're like, yeah, I'm competitive, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like in the health, like you know what you're doing. We just don't want people, I guess, in the sense of competition because it's like they think they're a piece of shit, they're not worth it. They, that's kind of where I'm coming from. But for the gals that, you're always winning, you're number one, you got the medals and all of that, kudos to you. Keep going. It's just bringing that awareness of where is our intention with that, with collaborations, with competition. It's just that friendly check-in. So if you're competitive, no problemo. If you're collaborative, no problemo.
Well, I think the proof, if you will, or of like what is needed is, are you happy? Are you flowing? Are you growing? Are you like becoming the next best version of yourself, or are you stuck in an old pattern trying to prove yourself?
Yeah.
Right. And that's really, I think it's sort of like, in Date Your Body, we're doing a lot of like, I have my CGM, my glucose monitor on, and it's looking at, well, yeah, for the rest of my life, am I never going to eat carbs? No, of course I am. But like, or drink a glass of wine or whatever. It's like, how can I live this differently? What are the best ways to do this? And it's like the 80/20, like my birthday happened, so I didn't count anything. Although my birthday dinner was fabulous and had everything I would eat normally. But there were days before and after where I was like, doing shit that I don't normally do. And I'm okay with that because I don't do it that often. I do it once every month or once at whatever. But it's learning how to be flexible. It's learning how to be, right. And then it's that whatever you do and you become whatever you do 80% of the time. If 20% of the time, you're out of alignment, whatever, you're human, of course that's needed. I can't get to the next step without being here in the muddy, mucky in between point A and point B, where you're figuring it out, right? So, but that's how you would gauge to me if it's working or not working.
Yeah, I think what a good combo. And again, I think these are the things, circling back, why do we have a podcast? Because these are the like little details that happen right inside of community and relationships. Um, and then we share and we talk about it and what you get to share, what my perspective is. You never know who's listening. And it's always coming back to, because we're talking about business, we're in a business community. Your job is not to go work with everybody. Your job is to know who you are and then create a business from that and then go make the freaking difference that you're here to make, right? And, I just am always pulling for, if we know ourselves, then when we show up into community, it makes a difference, right? Um, so that's kind of always the starting point. Know yourself, and then the right collaborations, the right people, the right resources will show up for you.
All right. Well, with that said, we'd love to hear from you. If anyone has anything to share about this topic, you know how to get a hold of us. And if you're a listener, thank you. Please share the show with anyone who you think it would benefit. I know that I've had some feedback from people on the show that appreciate listening to and getting to know more people in the community this way and feeling extra connected to them when they see them live in person. So thank you all. Keep it coming. And we look forward to having our next conversation, which I'm going to say, Tawny, I think it needs to be something around boundaries and overwhelm. So we'll have that conversation next.
Yes.
Stay tuned. Thank you, everybody.